Welcome back to the Lanterne Rouge cycling podcast with Benji Naesen. This is our Giro d'Italia Stage 16 recap pod and the Vuelta a España Stage 1 recap, both supported by our partner, Lecole, riding us through to the end of the season. Lecole and us, we've been so happy and proud of all your support of the partnership with Lecole. And so it's not just going to be the Giro partnership with Lecole, it's continuing all through the Vuelta. As you know, Lecole make performance cycling apparel, but read the Giro. If you want to get on a little thing that I haven't mentioned before, that they have a Giro Strava challenge, and that ends on the 23rd of October. And I'm pretty sure I'm like 3 days ahead of you guys and girls in Europe and America, in Australia, but that's ending on the 23rd of October, pretty soon. We got the link to that in the show notes and the YouTube video description. And if you ride for 4 hours between now and then, I think you unlock like a £50 reward or the local currency equivalent for that you can put towards any Lecole kit, and you also get a chance to win a £2,500 bundle of Lecole kit, which is at least I don't know 25,000 Australian shillings. So that's, I thought I'd let you all know that as well. But obviously, this is a big pod for the Lecole partnership, which we'll get to for the Giro in a second. But yeah, just thought I'd let you all know that, and we're all very happy, and we hope you're happy as well. Moving on to Giro Stage 16, from Udine to San Daniele del Friuli. This is right near, I think, Slovenian-Croatian border. It's 229 Ks, and it's got not that long climb. It's just a 3.3K, 7.6% climb, and then they did 3 repetitions at the end of the Monte di Ragogna, 3Ks at 9%, and then the finale. Benji was talking about this on Twitter, how it was a fake news climb. There was like a 20% pinch in it, then it flattened out. It was an irregular gradient. It was one of those climbs at the end. So definitely a day for breakaway and climbers in that breakaway, or strongmen in that breakaway, not a day for sprinters. But what break did form, Benji, and maybe you're not physically capable of reading out the entirety of this breakaway list.
Well, early on, it was pretty unclear who was in the breakaway because this race already started this morning at around 10:30 my time, Central European time. Now, the issue is 2 riders attacked, Ruben Guerrero and Visconti. Those are the first 2 riders in the KOM standings. They started the stage with Visconti in the blue jersey with quite a large advantage of around 30 points. And there's plenty of points among the parcours, so if these 2 guys are in the break, you know that they're going to try and go for every single one of those KOM points. And they did that. On the first ascension, they fought for the top, and Guerrero came out on top, taking the initial KOM point, and we'd see clearly throughout this whole parkour that Guerrero was the best climber of the 2, and Visconti tried hard to try and somewhat use the acceleration in a very late sprint to try and beat Guerrero, but every single time Guerrero went early, it was Guerrero that actually ended up taking the points. But we'll dive into the upcoming KOM points as well, but first, the other group that actually got away from the peloton, because those 2 riders got away, then about a good few minutes later, we saw a few attacks in the peloton, and certainly a whole portion of the peloton was just off in a breakaway. In total, 26 riders, and those were 4 riders from AG2R La Mondiale, with as their main engines Vendrame and Bouchard, most likely. And we've got 2 riders from Androni, Bisolti and Cepeda, Bovaro and Filline for Astana, Bataglin and Tratnik for Bahrain McLaren. Bataglin potentially the guy that could end up doing a hilly sprint. Tratnik may be the person that they sent forward to try and kind of put Bataglin in a bit of a seat. Now, for the rest of the teams, Fabro, Poljanski for Bora, Tonelli Zana for Bardiani, couldn't come up with the name for a second, Malechki and Roshkov for CCC, James Whelan for Evacuation Fat, so a teammate for Guerrero, and then Oldani for Lotto Sudal. Not sure what he's doing up there. He's a bit of a sprinter, so didn't expect him to survive too much. An interesting name is Sergio Samitier, was up there 20 minutes back in GC, so whatever time he takes today could end up getting him closer and closer in GC, but his issue is he was before the stage 12 minutes behind the 14th rider in GC, so he had to cross 12 minutes to try and move up one place, which is kind of sad if you think about it. He's got a teammate, Rubio. That's a person that was sitting in Thomas de Gendt's wheel in that stage that Thomas de Gendt ended up letting Ghana go, not really on purpose because he probably couldn't follow either. Puccio and Swift for Ineos. So two riders we've seen trying to get a stage win so far already in this Giro. And then three lone soldiers, Bernard, Conti, and Lorenzo Rota, also a figure that could help out Visconti. So we've got Guerrero with a teammate, Visconti for a teammate. This comes in play a bit later. This breakaway comes together after the first large climb once the 4G kicks in and we can actually see who's in the breakaway. A bit of a plateau section in between that and the next climb, and on that climb we see a battle between those two KOM favorites. And like I said, Guerrero, best climber, takes the sprint really against Visconti because he's not only a climber, he can outsprint the likes of Visconti here, so he's clearly not a slow man in acceleration either. And then we went to an intermediate sprint. I honestly don't remember who won that. Probably nobody gives a shit. And that's mainly because it only goes towards those breakaway classifications. I don't really follow them too much because I feel like they're under the radar a bit. Whenever the articles about the Giro come out, even on the Giro website, they always leave those out of the articles, and then I have to look on the actual stage page to find out what those classifications are like. So it feels like they're not promoting it enough to make it worth it. And yeah, that's why I'm not really following it either, I'm honestly saying. Now, the other spot was on the next KOM point, Visconti versus Guerrero. We know that was a story. Visconti's moving forward with a teammate, and suddenly Guerrero was gone. We saw from a helicopter view that Guerrero had some issues with his chain or his gear. It looked like he was stuck on the big ring, and he had to literally stand still and potentially switch bike. We don't know. It wasn't on camera or anything, but he was not there to sprint for the points. So that's 9 points for Visconti that Guerrero doesn't have. So yeah, bit of a sad moment for Guerrero to be taken out of this sprint for KOM just by a mechanical, but I guess that's cycling. Visconti again caught at the top, obvious. Then the action kind of continued, and we noticed that on the next KOM, which is part of that circuit that happens 3 times, we saw that Guerrero was already back in the group, and Ruben Guerrero clearly wasn't going to let that happen to him again, and he attacked early with about 2.5 kilometers to go on the climb. He just went. Visconti tried to follow for a bit, but clearly not as good as a climber as Guerrero. But the rest of the front group didn't really bother. They were just sitting there somewhat behind, and Visconti was robbed by Guerrero, and Guerrero kept on riding, and it looked like he wasn't really going solely for the points because he just kept on attacking and attacking towards that KOM finish line. And you'd say, is he doing this because he wants to continue this effort afterwards, or is he doing this because he just wants those KOM points and wants it securely? Because I swear he had like 25 seconds at the top on Visconti, who crossed second. So I think there's a 30-point difference now between those riders. And afterwards, we saw that Guerrero had that bit of a gap in the descent. Do you think that Guerrero was trying to keep himself forward, or do you think that he was going for these KM points and just wanted to be certain of actually getting them?
No, I think he was going forward for the stage, is what I generally think with Guerrero, but he sometimes does some unusual things. I'm not sure there's always a rhyme or reason for what he's doing. But the main point I remember was, I think, Boaro and Tratnik, the Slovenian on Bahrain McLaren, Boaro on Astana. They bridged across, I think, to Guerrero, and then the larger group was trying to bring them back, and did so. That larger group had, I think, Ben O'Connor and Swift were notable names in there, and Bataguin. And then Tratnik attacked again and got another break, or sort of another solo move off the front. So Guerrero had been brought back with them, and then all come back together. Tratnik goes again, and he got a pretty decent gap. It was like 45, went up to 45 seconds. No one was really doing a very good job of closing it down. We got into the last, say, 30 kilometers, or even closer, maybe the base of the last climb, Monte de Ragoña, in the last, I think, 20 kilometers. And he was looking pretty good, Tratnik. He wasn't looking like he was tiring, etc. And the group behind was mainly, it wasn't a large group anymore. It was just Swift, who was climbing unbelievably well for sort of rider he is, and Ben O'Connor. And the Australian for NTT attacked, I think, pretty close to the base of the Monte di Ragogna, the last ascension of it. And he ate into that gap so quickly into Tratnik. He, I think, closed it down, the full 45 seconds on this climb and caught up to Tratnik just before the top. And I think this was a pivotal moment for O'Connor where he didn't, unfortunately, catch Tratnik early enough that he could attack him actually on this longer climb. And maybe Tratnik was holding a little bit back for the end. But once they actually finished the climb and got onto the descent, it wasn't it just wasn't likely that he was going to be able to drop Tratnik, or possible at all, really. Who he's a good time trialist, pretty powerful guy, compact guy. So yeah, it would have to be the last final climb, which wasn't as long as the Monte di Ragogna. But when he bridged across, and then it's these two guys, Tratnik, who's been out there for a fair while, O'Connor, the young climber, Australian for NTT, looking good. Who were you thinking was going to win the stage, Benji?
It's a bit of a difficult question. I didn't know how the finish really looked in its place because we've got the profile. On the real profile, it basically looks like a flat finish. It's not a flat finish. It's got a 20% section in there. And it is kind of wavy in the sense that it goes up, goes down a tiny bit, then you've got a 20% wall, and then it goes down again, and then the last portion towards the line is again a bit of an uphill sprint. But I was thinking that O'Connor would need to drop Tratnik on the very steep 20% section. I think anybody that was watching was thinking the same. And I was expecting Tratnik to be able to hold on until afterwards, and then it would be a bit of a sprint of the dying swans, I would call it. And yeah, it didn't really get to that, did it?
No, I think O'Connor, judging from the way the stage played out, I'm not sure he was going to win whatever happened, given that he hadn't dropped Tratnik earlier. But he certainly approached this finale as if he was so much stronger than Tratnik that if he just rode the climb really hard, including not just the steep pinch, but the entirety of maybe the last 1,500 meters, he decided if he just rode that really hard, he would be able to ride Tratnik straight off his wheel. And that certainly, I mean, this ain't juniors anymore. Like, Tratnik's a good, strong guy. I mean, he's not the best climber in the world, but still consistent. He won a stage, I think, in Romandy. That was a prologue, I think. He won the Volta Limbo Classic, which I'm pretty sure has like a lot of punchy climbs in it. So yeah, I'm sure O'Connor's better than Tratnik on like a 3K 9% climb. We saw that in the last climb. But in a finish like this, I'm not sure he's actually... No, actually, I think we all can agree now that Tratnik's got way more punch than O'Connor. So it was a little bit unusual to see that, but maybe it didn't make too much of a difference anyway. And we got to that steep section. O'Connor's on the front. He's tried to basically drop Tratnik off the wheel. He's just been sitting. There's Swift, I think, trying to close it down 50 seconds behind. He's got, obviously, Tratnik's teammate back again sitting on his wheel, and Kamil Malachi for CCC sitting there. Swift's closing it, and Tratnik chills, waits for like the last bit of the pinch. He sees O'Connor faltering a little bit, and just bang, he's gone. And puts 7 seconds into O'Connor very, very quickly by the line. And in the Lacole kit, Jan Tratnik, Slovenian. It's been a great year for Slovenian cycling, getting his biggest win of his career, a stage in the Giro d'Italia. I mean, I think it might be his second World Tour level win, but this is clearly his best ever win. He's got 9 pro wins, a guy that was riding Pro Conti at 28 years old in 2018 at CCC Sprandi Polkovice, and only moved up to World Tour level with Bahrain in 2019. So a very good story for Jan Tratnik, and he certainly deserved to win today. He was probably the most aggressive guy in the break. But anything else from this stage notable, Benji, before we hustle on for the stage 17 preview?
I would honestly say so, because we had the GC favorites after that. And on the last climb...
So in my defense, GC guys let the break go to 15 minutes today, and I forgot the GC guys even existed. in this stage. Okay. But yep, my bad, Benji. Go ahead.
So in the last portion, the last climb, we saw that the Koenig was moving up, and the Koenig was moving up with quite a effort, as we saw multiple people drop and kept on dropping in that elite group, I'd call it, because it wasn't the peloton anymore. The likes of Sagan was dropped there, so if Bora went for Sagan today, it would obviously not have worked. We've spoken about it before in, well, the last stage recap. We previewed this one shortly, and we said that. But surrounding this stage, I would still say that Almeida looked like he was going to try something, and at a certain point, he only had one teammate left. I think it was Peter Seri that was really pushing it on that final big climb. And after that, they kept on pacing it slowly but surely towards the finish line. But they weren't done, because on that last steep pinchy section, Almeida attacked. And who was first to respond? It was Kelderman in his wheel. We saw that Fulsang was in third position and Nibali was in fourth position. And suddenly Fulsang started dropping through the group, and Fulsang dropped through the group. He didn't actually lose contact there from the group, but he didn't look good on a punchy finish, not at the speed or acceleration that Almeida was going on. Almeida is by far, well, clearly the best puncher in the GC group at this moment in this Giro, watching this stage. And that was very noticeable, because not only did Fulsang fall through the group, Nibali went past Fulsang, and then Kelderman started suffering, and Kelderman actually lost the grip with Almeida and was a solid 4 seconds behind at a certain point in the last kilometer somewhere. And at that point, Nibali had to try and close it down, had to try and get past Kelderman. He clearly couldn't follow Almeida either. He was the stronger one compared to Kelderman and compared to Fulsang, but Nibali could not close it down, stronger than the last few times we've seen him this Giro. So it's relatively promising for the third week for me personally. But it was only a bit later that Jai Hindley in the last 300 meters was able to get past everybody and start punching it on the front of that group. I don't know why Hindley waited so long to get to the front of the group, because he clearly saw that the gap was opening up and he clearly had the energy looking at it. So he went to the front, started trying to close the gap to Almeida. In the end, Almeida crosses the line 2 seconds ahead of Hindley, Nibali, and the rest of the group. The only people that lost time were the likes of Masnada and such. Ulisi wasn't able to follow the group, so clearly a tiny bit too hard for the likes of him. And to be honest, there's no stage win for the taking, so why would he try to follow anyway? And Nibali looking stronger than before, and honestly,
Yeah, I thought Nibali looked really good. I was alarmed actually at how good he looked. Better than Kelderman, I thought. And maybe if he had someone dragging him over to Almeida, he would have been pretty much close to on Almeida's wheel. And this is a finish that doesn't suit him. So, yeah, Nibali looking good. And that dovetails nicely into a stage where it could be one for Nibali if he does have good legs to put a lot of pressure on Almeida and Sunweb and Hindley, of course. So, yeah, Almeida, Kelderman and Hindley in the top 3 on GC. But this is stage 17 starting in Bassano del Grappa. That's at the base of Monte Grappa. They don't do that climb. It's where I think Cole have their factory that they own, by the way. Just a side anecdote for this stage. It's 204 kilometers long, finishing in Madonna di Campiglio, and it's got some beastly climbs. 3 category 1s, which are the equivalent of HC climbs in the Tour de France. I think Forcella Valbona, 21.4 Ks at 6.7%. Long descent. Short Valley, Monte, Bondone, 20.5 Ks at 6.5%. Then another Rolly Valley, first intermediate sprint of the day. I don't think tomorrow will be collecting that. Next climb, category 3, just a little cat 3, 10.5 Ks at 5.8%. Then a false flat uphill drag, and then they do the Madonna di Campiglio 12 Ks at 6%. Now, just want to check whether there's any steep sections in there. These climbs are pretty undulating, particularly the Monte Bondone. That's got some nasty Ks in 13, 14, 15. And if I had to guess if Nibali was going for a long ranger, I'd probably pick somewhere in the midpoint of the Bondone. I'm not sure he might have the legs for that there. He might not. Otherwise, if they get to the Madonna di Campiglio, it's it's not that bad, to be honest. And the Passo d'Orone is not that bad either. Like the Campiglio gets really easy at the end. So Bondone midsection or last third looks like it could be a half decent launch pad if someone wants to do something crazy, which some of these riders need to do if they actually want to win this Giro. But who's your pick for tomorrow, Benji? Is another breakaway because no one's going to be bothered controlling the race at all?
Whew, good question. I am going to go ahead and I am saying Attila Valter because I said it last time for a mountain stage. He didn't go into the break, so I'm going to say him in the mountain stage until he is in the breakaway. That's a pretty bad tactic, but I'm hoping that he decides to be in the breakaway because let's be honest, he is supposed to be a climbing talent. He clearly has the talent. He should use it because he's in top 25 in GC somewhere. So I would have expected him to be in more breakaways so far. And I've got the same thing about Aurélien Paré-Peintre. I've got the same feeling there that he's got the talent. He's also in top 25 in GC. So they are clearly following the GC group for some reason. And I'm not sure, but I don't think they're doing it for top 25 in GC, but it looks like they are at the moment because they're not really doing anything for the actual GC. Now, if they can change that, they could go into the breakaway. They could try and take back 7-8 minutes in a mountain stage, and they could do what Bernsteiner did last year in was it the Tour de France or the Vuelta? Don't know. Might be the Vuelta, and take back time like that. Same with Hagen, how he did that. So I believe that those two riders are very eligible to try and take back time in breakaways. Same thing that Samitier did today. I think Samitier today bridged maybe one position only, to be honest, but let's take a look to be sure.
He's 10 minutes back, but he's gained a lot of time back.
He indeed gained back like 10 minutes, but he's still on the same position. Didn't even pass the likes of Bernsteiner. So that's a bit of a bummer for the lad, but he's now close to and could try it again on one of the next days. And if he gets another 5 minutes, the man is accidentally in the top 12 of GC. So these are the likes of moves that I expect the Paré-Peintre to do. Attila Valter is getting harder because he's dropping in GC. He's now on 36 minutes, which he'd have to get back 26 minutes to get in top 15, which is rather unlikely. So all in all, those are my two picks, Paré-Peintre or Attila Valter for this stage.
I'm going with Ilnur Zakarin. I think he can win this stage. Just if he does well enough, I think he's a good enough climber. I'm not sure if he's crashed or anything recently, or if that's affecting him. But yeah, I think him or Ruben Guerrero, to be honest. Like Ruben Guerrero is probably one of the best climbers in the race. He's going to want to get in the break again, so I wouldn't be surprised if Ruben Guerrero won either. But I'm going with Zakarin, and if it was out of the GC group, I would go with Vincenzo Nibali if there's no break. I think Nibali could win this stage as well.
I agree that he has a possibility for it, but the annoying part is that looking at the profile,
It's the sequencing of the climbs is the problem and how difficult they are.
that's true, but I feel like the Bondone is not close enough to the final climb, and that Fafcat Durone is not going to make the big difference in the plateau section for me. So I find it hard to see Bondone as a real jumping board yet, but I guess we'll have to find out tomorrow because we're not wizards, so we can't actually guess that either.
Yeah, and by the way, we've got to say, Fernando Gaviria tested positive for COVID today, and an Asia Dual Mondial staff member, I think, Benji, or rider, can't remember. I think it was just Gaviria. No, it was just staff member. Sorry, Gaviria obviously had COVID in March, and when he was back in UAE, I think, for the UAE tour, and he's the only rider that's tested positive. Now, I've got my view on it. I think it's a bit early to be saying he's one of the very, very rare people to be reinfected with COVID in the world. I think that's unlikely because if there was COVID rampant in the peloton or he was exposed to it, then why would he be the only rider testing positive for it on this rest day? So I think it's more likely, again, not a scientist, but I think it's more likely that it's just a not a false positive, or he's still shedding the virus or something like that. We've seen that sort of thing's been happening in Australia as well. Or he's one of the very, very, very unlucky people who has contracted it again. So he's obviously pulled out, but otherwise the Giro, obviously thanks to Education First, sending that letter to the UCI. Without them sending that letter, the UCI and RCS wouldn't have taken COVID seriously, and maybe we would have had way more positive tests. So their letter obviously made a really big difference. Moving on, I think, to the Vuelta a España Stage 1. I'm so excited about this Vuelta. It already delivered. Stage 1 from Irun to Arate, we just did the beastly Vuelta preview podcast. If you haven't listened to that, it's still relevant. I mean, everything except Stage 1 is pretty relevant. Or maybe our GC picks aren't anymore. Irun to Arate Ibar, 173 Ks, flat for the first half. Gentle climb, a couple of cat threes, 5.5 Ks, 4%, etc. Then the stage really started. Two main climbs. Alto de El Gueta, I think. 2.9 Ks at 8.8%. That's in the last 25 kilometers, and then, or 20 kilometers. Descent, no flat after that point. Straight into the Alto de Arate, which is a hard climb, 5 Ks at 8.5%. I think the climbing record's like 10.5, 11 minutes from back in the day, maybe Jalabert or someone. Horner's done a pretty good time there as well. And it's not actually a hilltop finish. They descend in the last 800 meters. And we said this on the preview podcast, actually, that's why I picked Carapaz for this stage, because I was like, well, if it was straight uphill, I'd pick Roglic. But it's a bit of a downhill section, etc. Maybe they group together. But yeah, it was an interesting profile. They use it in Tour of Basque Country, I think. And it's usually the GC men, because there's some steep sections in there. Benji said this is certainly a fake news climb. But who went into the break, Benji? It was, as you predicted, Benji said it exactly in the preview pod. It was going to be a doom break, because the GC guys are just way too itchy on a stage 1 of a Grand Tour.
Yes, but the riders in it were pretty strong riders, though. We saw an early attack by Le TGV de Mont Clément. I just ruined his nickname. The TGV of Clermont-Ferrand. That's how you say it. The rest of the group was Zuterlin, Joregi, and then we also saw two riders bridge up, and that was the likes of Bol and Wellens, not Kees Bol, Jetse Bol, rider for Burgos BH, that I think was fighting with his teammate Madrazo and a Cofidis rider or something for a victory last year on Javalambre, Alto de Javalambre in Vuelta. So I remember these guys. These guys are in my head, because Jetse Bol also live streams his Zwift sessions sometimes. And that was a curious thing to watch. Anyway, 5-man breakaway group. Let's continue about that. Bol and Wellens bridged up quite easily, but yeah, nothing really happened throughout the stage itself, except for some chaos in the peloton when we had crashes. And unfortunately, my pick for GC, Daniel Martinez, hit the ground pretty early on the stage. Didn't look too great. It took a really long time to get back to the group. And because of that, I'm starting to really doubt whether he's going to do anything for GC at all, because, yeah, it didn't really help him at the end of the stage either, it looked. Anyway, we also saw some other crashes. Ilan van Wilder is out of the Vuelta. He's one of the first abandonments, unfortunately. Was looking forward to see what he can do. Yes, van Wilder was a crash. Frank was not a crash. He was feeling ill the last few days and was still taking to the Vuelta, which I still don't know why. If someone's ill in a period like 2020, I wouldn't put him in a Grand Tour. That's my personal opinion. Obviously, the guy technically tested negative, so on paper he's allowed to ride this Vuelta, but I just feel like it's a bad decision to do that in these days.
And we're being consistent. We said the same thing about Mühlberger as well. We were like, yes, the minute he was feeling unwell, they should have pulled him out. So we've been consistent about that throughout all the racing. But yeah, sorry, go on, Benji.
Yeah, in the breakaway, like, the KOM points were blatantly one guy. I said blatantly once again, I should stop that. Were won by one guy, Quentin Joregi. He went for the KOM points, took every single one of them, and is now the KOM leader for tomorrow, I think. I don't actually know, because it depends how many points the last few climbs of the day give. So I'm going to keep on talking for a single second. There we go. And I can tell you that Joregi did not have enough points to actually get the KOM jersey today, to my utter surprise, because the last two climbs in this stage actually ended up giving more for that. And I'll throw it to you after this. We saw that Ineos was moving up and being the team that wanted to really make something of this stage. So for the likes of Carapaz, and they surely tried.
Carapaz is clearly the Ineos GC leader. We said that on the preview, and I think most people we respect around the traps, Mihai, Flamme Rouge, etc., We didn't think Froome was capable of contesting GC here, and I thought he was going to lose time today. Me and Benji thought he was going to lose like 15 to 20 seconds. So we were still optimists, but Amador on Ineos, I think Ineos got a pretty strong squad here. Like they still have a good, well-rounded team, but they were riding pretty hard early with Amador and Dylan Van Baal on the first of the main two climbs close to the finish, and they dropped Froome. And he seemed to do the thing he did in Dauphiné where he sort of drops before he's fully blown up, and he rides his own tempo, and he kind of got back to the group a little bit, but then they accelerate and etc. And unfortunately for him, I mean, Ineos did a really good job. They got Carapaz in good position at the front. Jumbo-Visma were like mid-pack. Movistar were present. Movistar had also helped bring the breakaway back a lot today. I think Movistar actually I got to be honest straight up and already say it. We slept on Movistar and Mars a little bit too much. I think in the preview podcast, I was worried. I sort of called that out at the end of that long pod, and I mean it's funny to say that sleeping on Movistar, but I think Mars is strong and Movistar are strong and got to be taken pretty seriously. So they were helping bring back the breakaway with Ineos and Jumbo Visma today. Vinance, who's Tom Dumoulin's father, I'm pretty sure. So Ineos get over the top of that climb. They've got Carapaz in the wheel. It's all looking good, except Froome's been dropped. And on the descent, he wasn't really able to catch back up. He realises he's not going to catch up because he's not got that descending confidence anymore, and he sort of sits up. So that was that. Carapaz was left in with two Colombians, Brandon Rivera and Ivan Sosa, who we mentioned before. Pure climbers, particularly Ivan Sosa, is like the textbook definition of a pure climber. They used Rivera first, and on this last climb, they were talking it. Alto de Arate, they were going hard, but the problem is they were going early. And driving it really hard was Rivera. He pulls off. He's done. Sosa pulled for as long as possible, but as I said, he's just not that good. Like he looks like a pure climber, but he's like a pure climber that's not actually one of the best pure climbers, in my view at least. You compare him to like Sepp Kuss, he's not near that level, in my view. But he did all right. He did a fine job for Carapaz, and then Carapaz was kind of left on his own. And Carapaz knew this was coming. There was still like 3Ks or 2Ks left in the climb, and then it became a game of cat and mouse. And Jumbo-Visma did what they didn't do throughout the entirety of the Tour de France. They did something different, and they attacked with Sepp Kuss. We've been begging for it for ages. And were you surprised to see that so early, Benji? I mean, it wasn't like, this is not the biggest out-of-the-box thinking I've ever seen attacking with him, but were you surprised they did try something different so early?
I was mostly glad they did because this is promising towards the mountain stages, and if they do it here on a stage where it potentially isn't as risky, I totally get it, but I hope that they pull this through and also do it on the mountain stages because Gus can clearly follow the better guys here, and if this is on a real mountain stage that certainly fits him better in my honest opinion, then I believe that he's going to be able to really make something happen. We see that their team as a whole looks weaker though, so I'm not sure that they have the capability to have the same kind of train strategy that they had at the Tour de France. I think Van Aert was a really big influence there. Obviously, Geesink is still here, looked pretty decent, but to be honest, he had to get off the back of that group quite quickly as well. I just want to pick in and say that Michael Woods, one of the people that we probably had as a potential opportunist on this stage. I didn't have him as my pick, nor did I think you had him as your pick. But he actually fell in the descent just before the last climb, and he finished today on 18 minutes. So Woods will not be going for GC, that's for sure. So most likely he's going to try and get back, hopefully without any injuries. Hopefully the X-rays point that out, and then he can turn back for a potential stage win. But you can continue onwards with the GC battle.
Yeah, so Kuss attacking, brought back. Carapaz was actually the man bringing him back. So I think Carapaz, yeah, he missed out not having teammates to bring back the Kuss attack. He had to bring back Kuss because, as you know, he's a legitimate GC threat. Brings him back, nothing really happens. I don't think anyone counters except maybe Hugh Carthy. It was Hugh Carthy, not Mike Woods, right? And he attacked, and again, Carapaz was right there. Dan Martin was in this group. Chavez was looking okay. Grosschartner bridged back. But we also got to say a notable absentee was Tom Dumoulin. So you've got Roglic in this group with Kuss, and already Dumoulin's off the back. Now, he hadn't really been pulling, so I guess he just wasn't good enough today. But then a weird thing happened. I think Kuss attacked again, but it was more of a testing attack, this one. He got brought back again. And Jumbo-Visma just decided for the last 2Ks or 1,500 metres of this climb, with Dumoulin off the back, they just set tempo with Sepp Kuss again. With this whole large group, with all the other GC contenders, Mars, Carapaz. That's pretty much it. That's pretty much the only other GC contenders. Mars and
Everybody's
Carapaz.
gone.
Yeah, everyone else is literally gone already.
Vlasov, F.
Jesus, Vlasov, Martinez. Wow. Okay, yeah. So, but still, Mars and Carapaz are here, and then Dumoulin's like they're distancing him. So I thought it would have made sense for Roglic to counter over after the last Kuss attack. I'm not sure anyone would have been able to bring him back. He obviously had good legs, but anyway, it wasn't a major stuff up. But it's interesting to see again. They have, through their own actions, they have put 51 seconds into Dumoulin today, and he's lost 51 seconds to Mas and Carapaz. So similar sort of thing to stage 18 and stage 8 in the Tour de France. We'll see if that comes back to bite them later. Probably not. But anyway, Kuss sets tempo. Kuss pulls off. Roglic has about 300 metres left in the climb before this 850 metre 1K descent, and Roglic does what he does, and he just bangs it. I've got a cold take for everybody. If your climbing threshold is good enough that you pretty much can't get dropped by anyone in the world on a climb except for Tadej Pogacar on his best ever day, and you then also have probably, when you do a 1 minute anaerobic dump, at the end of those climbs, no one can hold your wheel, you can win a lot of stages. And that's why Roglic, that's my cold take of the day. That's why Roglic wins a lot of races. And yeah, no one could get to his wheel. I think, that being said, I think Carapaz could have got there. I think he could have, maybe on the descent as well, in the finale, like in the last 200 meters. But Mars did this thing. You see it all the time. Mars was like, I'm closing it. 1 second, and blocks Carapaz, whilst Roglic is like steaming up the road. 1 second later, Mars is like, oh shit, flicks his over, I can't close it. Meanwhile, like the elastic's probably snapped, and Carapaz has to close it all on his own. So yeah, Roglic goes into the descent. It's really twisty chicane. Like, it's like the Strade descent in like the last 150 meters, but for 800 meters, not on cobbles, obviously. So positioning is key, and it's really hard to bring anyone back. And yeah, even though Carapaz was 1 second behind Roglic, it's really hard to make up that 1 second in that time. So Roglic takes the stage win with a well-timed attack, and then that quick descent. And it seemed like he just knew how the stage profile worked better than the other riders. That being said, I think Carapaz was actually the strongest rider in the stage. He brought back moves from Carthy, Kuss twice. He brought the Roglic move back to within 1 second on the line and was looking really strong, and didn't have a stronger teammate. So I think he's looking really good, and I think he's one of the strongest. He's going to clearly be Roglic's biggest threat for this Vuelta, and maybe Enric Mas, who looked good too, a close third. But Roglic, double Slovenian victory, Giro, now Vuelta stage 1, already into the red jersey. Heavy lies that red jersey. Will it be too heavy for him? 5 seconds now behind is Carapaz because of the bonus seconds. Third is Dan Martin on GC because he came third on the stage. Fourth, Esteban Chavez. Fifth, Grosschartner. He's riding for GC apparently. Enric Mas 6th, Hugh Carthy 7th, Sepp Kuss 8th, Bennett 9th. And then there's like a 50-second gap to Bennett and co. And then there was that group of like Bennett had Valverde, Hessing, Izagirre, and De La Cruz, Dumoulin, Ford, Malone, Guillaume Martin. They all lost about 51 seconds today. So that's something to bear in mind with Tom Dumoulin. But do you think I'm underrating Roglic's performance today, Benji, and overrating what I saw from Carapaz?
It's really hard to judge Roglic on the stage that he's in, because at the start of the Tour de France, we were very unclear on whether the whole story about the Dauphiné crash and back problems was real, because for the first portion of the race and basically the entire Tour de France, except for Côte d'Alors, we saw no real attack of Roglic outside of the last 500 meters or something. So it was not really easy to guess whether he's in a good shape or anything. Today he was hanging at the back of the group every single second on that last ascension, except for the time that he started attacking on top of the climb. So not even really on an uphill section. It was more on a descent, actually, that he made that move, which to me suggests that either he wasn't able to get away from that group or he's waiting a bit and seeing how the competition is for the upcoming days, because this is only stage one. It doesn't feel like it, but this is stage one of a Grand Tour, and we've seen GC action with Roglic in the red jersey at the end of the day. Now, I do want to shed a light on Großschartner because he was my pick for today, and I'm hella proud of him, outside of not winning, obviously. But I saw that he wasn't able to really follow on the steeper sections of the climb, but had the, I'm not sure dexterity is the word for it, but he had the strength to keep on going, and he caught up on a moment where the front group was slowing down a tiny bit. So despite him being in that group and Chavez being pretty close, I don't think that those two riders are on the level of climbing as the riders that are at the front, because those were the riders that were able to follow any attack on the climb. So clearly at the moment we have, as the favorites of this La Vuelta, after stage one, Roglic, who is currently in red, Richard Carapaz. That is for me the 1v1 of this. And if we look at the rest of the results, then I'd say Dan Martin is most likely not going to be avidly competing with those two on the bigger mountain stages, but he bloody well did it today. The man's third on a stage that, let's be honest, some people might have already said that Dan Martin was washed a few months back, and he was injured in the Tour de France. We didn't really see what came out of that because of it, but he's clearly on a good level right now, and if he can sustain that in the mountains, then he could compete for a decent GC. I just don't see it happening on the big mountains, but I guess that's just my personal insight and personal thoughts at the moment. In that group, Enric Mas is for me the third guy in the battle at the moment. So Roglic, Carapaz, and Enric Mas. Hugh Carthy, I'm surprised that he was up there, generally.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, we know that Martinez was supposed to be the leader here, hands down. Martinez crashes, they switch around the plan. Perhaps Carthy was also co-leader. We don't know their behind-the-scenes story, but Carthy's clearly on a level that is decent and that can be sustained, because I feel like he is a better climber, for example, on the real mountains than Dan Martin. So I think that Hugh Carthy could be a really surprising top five, but the issue is we still got that time trial of 33 kilometers. Carthy's not an amazing time trialist, so I believe that that might be his weakness, but then again, there's only one time trial. Do you think that Kas is clearly riding for Roglic since he's lost 10 seconds today, or do you think he blew himself up a bit too much himself?
I just don't know what Jumbo Visma were doing with Koos pulling. Didn't really make much sense to me. I think they're still. I reckon Koos going to probably end up third on GC somehow, high up on GC, just because of the way this Vuelta is going to pan out. Notable people who are already out of GC, obviously Martinez, Woods, Vlasov is obviously still sick. David Gaudu lost 2.5 minutes today, so you ain't winning the Vuelta if you lose 2.5 minutes on this stage. He was supposed to be riding GC. Marc Soler lost 1:18. That's kind of surprising. Davide Formolo, he wasn't able to hang with them on this climb. I thought he could have hung with them on this climb, to be honest. A little bit surprising to me. George Bennett lost time, and Froome and Pinot, I think, lost like 11 minutes. So they're already out of GC, and it's just really, it is those. I think Dan Martin we've got to take seriously, and I think he's going to win a stage. Again, I think if Dan Martin wasn't riding GC, and if he deliberately lost like 30 minutes tomorrow somehow, I think he'd win like 3 stages if he got in the break, but he's going to be too close on GC, and then he's just really good, but Roglic is much better, or just a bit better at the things he's really good at, like finishes like today. But Dan Martin, hats off to him. We mentioned in the preview, not a man to be slept on, given that his back injuries kind of that hampered him in the Tour. So yeah, Chavez, I don't really expect too much from him. But tomorrow's stage from Pamplona to Leckenbury, or Berry, it's another mountain stage. Well, another hilly stage at least, probably mountains a bit strong. 151 Ks, Cat 3, Puerto de Guilano, 7.2 Ks at 5% in the first 30 Ks. Then they do Puerto de Abasa, 7 Ks at 5.7% with about 90 Ks into the stage. Plateaus, short descent, false flat downhills, and then the Alto de San Miguel de Arala, 9.5 Ks at 7.9%. Now, I can't even remember already, Benji, who we picked for tomorrow's stage. I can remember who I picked. I picked Dion Smith, and I'm a little bit worried about that old pick. It's reminding me of my Demar pick in that in that stage. But then again, it depends on how they ride. It depends on how the GC teams ride it, right? Because if Jumbo Visma don't have the appetite to do anything tomorrow and Carapaz and Ineos take it off, then maybe they're all chilling and he gets over it. Maybe he doesn't. So, I mean, I'm gonna hedge my bets and go with who's the other Australian on the on Mitchell and Scott, who I said was going to win every stage. Yeah, I'm going with Robert Stannard.
The thing is, we were also talking about Mohoric for this stage, but the issue is that Mohoric climbed so well today that he was better than Wout Poels and had to drag Wout Poels to the line, and only is on 151 in GC on the same time as Sosa, so he's clearly having a good day. Champoussin on the same time, and therefore I'm kind of pointing at a few riders that clearly overperform, not necessarily overperforming. Champoussin is a rider that has done a lot, U23 championships, top 3 somewhere, if I recall correctly. And also, Bajoli was great today, 51 seconds down. Does that prove something for the next stage? For me, it proves that they might not win it, because I believe that this stage is most likely for for breakaway, sorry. Very big difference. Although, it's only a 151k stage though, so that's what makes me doubt a bit, but you've got that ascension. It's 9.5 kilometers, 7.9 percentage. It has steep sections on it, but it's relatively the same gradient towards the top. It's not like there's a descent in the middle and then it's 20% or anything. It doesn't work like that. It's not a fake news climb. But then we've got a descent of, that 15 kilometer descent, not 50. Do you feel like that descent is going to kill the breakaway chances or keep it? Because you're going for a breakaway. I'm not sure it is going to be that, because whoever attacks on the last climb would be expected to be able to make it to the line and not really lose too much time because of that descent. So potentially the likes of a Roglic might still try something. He knows that he's in good form. They said they were going to ride more aggressively. And with a guy like Martin Wijnands, like you said, Tom Dumoulin's dad, he's most likely going to be decent at keeping the gap to the breakaway at 3 minutes, 4 minutes. And if it's 4 minutes at that last climb with the power we've seen from Ineos, the power we've seen from halfway Jumbo, I wouldn't say that they were overly convincing today, but they still had Kuz up there. They still had Roglic up there. So don't you think that GC will somewhat try to keep it under control and try something? Since it's also the last race of the season, there's 18 stages, but as we know in this period, every single one could be lost.
I think they'll control, but I'm not sure they'll light it up to the extent they did today. I'd be surprised if they dialed it up to the same extent. Like the Alto de Rate is harder than the last climb we have tomorrow. And we had 2 climbs in quick succession today. We had also like crosswind on the climbs and the descent. So that's why I don't care if it's from a break or the GC groups. I'm going with Robert Stannard, with my backup being my preview pick, Dion Smith.
Okay, I had Aramburu for this one, I think, or I switched him around at the end for Bajoli. But the issue is that Aramburu dropped at the start of the last climb, so I think start of the second last climb even, so Aramburu wasn't really going to do it, and I don't know whether it's dropping on purpose to lose time. I think he lost a solid amount of time, 12 minutes. He ended up in a group with Madrazo and such. I think we're going to see mainly teams like Burgos having someone in the breakaway every single day. Madrazo could be the one for tomorrow as well. Maybe Alex Molinar, but I think if it really comes down to a breakaway, I think that Buru might have trouble winning it. So, yeah, who the hell will win from the breakaway? I'm going to go for a wild one then, because I just don't really know yet. And therefore, I'll go for Alexander Yabushenko or Magnus Cort Nielsen. I think I'll go Yabushenko. Cort Nielsen might be too hard on those steep sections. So Yabushenko is my breakaway pick. I hope he pops out at the top. He's got a bit of a sprint at the end. By the way, very important detail, Mareshko is still in the race, and he was not the worst rider in it, and he only lost 16 minutes. Actually, there's another DNF. Alexander Genier is also DNF'd in the race. Just wanted to give that, which I don't know why at the moment.
Right, so that's all from the Vuelta. Stage 2 tomorrow, it looks to be another interesting one, and stage 17 of the Giro, I think, is going to be one you should tune in for. Hopefully it'll be, I think, more interesting than today, GC-wise. Another race that was today was, I think, the last Women's World Tour race of the season, a one-day race, one of my favourite on the calendar. It's Driedaagse, Brugge-De, Panne, near where Benji, it probably goes past his house, and it's pancake flat.
Almost, actually.
Really? Okay, fair enough. 155 Ks. I'm not sure if there's cobbles in this one or not. I don't think so. Half of West Flanders seems to be cobbled to me, but it's all about the wind in this race. It's all about weather. And if you look at where this race goes to, it goes to the Panne is on the coast. And there were vires today, trust me. When I tuned in with 25 Ks to go, because there wasn't much live coverage before then. I was struggling to find live coverage before then. It was like those Hen-Wevelgem in 2015. There was like 5 echelons split across the road. Favourites for the race were Lotte Kopecky, Belgian national champion for Lotto Soudal, Bulls Dormans rider Julian Dor. Well, the whole Bulls Dormans team got in the final, the first echelon. The whole Bulls team: Julian Dor, Chantal van den Broek Black, eventually Diederiksen, Majerus, who I think is Luxembourg national champ, Amy Peters, and Lonneke Uneken. They were very, very strong today. Alice Barnes, Hannah Barnes, they're pretty strong as well on Canyon Shram, as well as Rihanna Marcus has actually looked really good at the end of this season. Grace Brown, Sarah Roy, they've been doing well in the Cobble Classics. Oh, well, Brown has, and Roy did well at Hen-Wevelgem. And Sunweb probably had the second strongest team and the best sprinter in the race. Suzanne Anderson, Alison Jackson, Pfeiffer Georgie, Franziska Koch, and Julia Soek, and they're running obviously for their sprinter Lorena Wiebes, who's best sprinter in the world. So and then obviously, Longa Borghini, who I'm pretty sure has raced like literally every women's race in this calendar. She must be so tired. And I think Audrey Cordon-Ragot, the French national champ, on Trek, I think she might have pulled out of the race or something. And she was like, "I'm cooked. I'm done." And obviously, last name, Lisa Brennauer, German national champion, sort of TT style rider for Keratizit WNT Pro Cycling. But there were these echelons, and in this front group was a massive group of pretty much the whole Sunweb team and the whole Bulls team, minus Chantal van den Broek Black. And they got their sprinters there, Julian Dor and Lorena Wiebes. They've also got Lotte Kopecky there. And Sunweb, I think, made a complete meal of this finale. They've got, I think, Rihanna Marcus is trying to bridge back. Chantal van den Broek Black's on her wheel. They're like 30 seconds behind, 20 seconds behind. And Bulls were pulling. Everyone was pulling really well. Like all the riders were pulling, not just the Bulls or Sunweb riders. And then Sunweb kind of stopped pulling. And it was clear that Sunweb decided their strategy in the last 15 Ks was going to be, we're going to use our numerical advantage to close down any and all attacks. And then that'll get us to the line, and then we'll lead out Lorena Wiebes and then win. It didn't make sense to me. I thought if they'd kept cooperating, kept working really well, Bulls probably would have helped them as well, because they got Julianne Dor there, who, she can win a sprint. And Lotte Kopecky, she was working happily. Mitchell Scott with Sarah Roy was pulling through. Ellen Van Dijk for Trek and Longa Borghini. Well, Van Dijk was certainly working, as well as some of the smaller riders like Balsamo for Valcar. Made no sense to me what Sunweb were doing. It just seemed like they were making it more difficult for themselves, and that's exactly what happened. Bulls were like, well, fuck this, and just started attacking them with legit riders, Amy Peters, I think other riders like Uniken, I think if I'm pronouncing her name correctly, she attacked pretty shortly after. They were just rolling Sunweb. Marjorie, sorry, she attacked a couple of times. She was the sacrificial lamb. Chantal van den Broek Black, because they slowed down so much, she just won Tour of Flanders. She bridged across to them on Marcus' wheel and immediately attacked them. And yeah, it just didn't make sense to me. And then there were all the Sunweb riders were burning their matches that way. They were lucky that Suzanne Anderson was pretty strong today. I think she kind of saved Lorena Wiebes a little bit, as well as Alison Jackson. She makes pretty funny TikToks as well. I think she, Canadian, but yeah, she was really strong and did a good job. But coming into the finale, it was Van Dijk attacking late, brought back, kind of messes up the whole last 1,500 metres. It's really messy. Then I think Longo Borghini attacks early, and then that gets brought back. Amy Peters goes again for the last time, or a Bulls rider goes again for the last time. And then it was Julianne Dore launching really early because she, I think, was trying to get the jump on Lorena Wiebes. She launches early. Sorry, no, I've mistaken that. It was Alison Jackson, I'm pretty sure, who had gone up the road and had the wheel let go. Wiebes let the wheel go, and she's a Sunweb lead-out rider. And then she was being chased down, I think, by Peters or Longo Borghini. As soon as they catch her, Julianne Dore starts sprinting. The Bulls Dorman sprinter. She goes into her slipstream. Alison Jackson slipstream, who's decelerating, that's fine. She then comes back out of her slipstream to the right. She's sprinting pretty much bang on the center of the road. So you can see the white line or whatever, the crack in the road. She's sprinting down the middle. Lorena Wiebes, who's quicker than her, in my view, and the results show that, she was a bit delayed getting there initially, maybe a little bit out of position, but kicks, gets into the slipstream of Julianne Dore, and then starts to move to the left-hand side. We've still got like 75 meters to go, and she's coming quick, Lorena Wiebes. She's coming real quick, and she's in like the middle third, the left-hand third of the road, in the middle of that. And if you look at La Flamme Rouge, they tweeted about this. They called it Lavar Rouge or something, Lavr Rouge, what happened later. Anyway, Julianne Dore, she then starts to deviate. Just like the Groenewegen deviation, the way that started didn't finish as badly as that today, thankfully, but same thing. She starts to move over to the left, same as Bennett won a little bit, but that didn't go all the way to the barriers. It wasn't great. And she just kept moving Julianne Dore over to the left. I'm like, holy fuck, is she going to properly barrier Lorena Wiebes? And eventually Wiebes moving up has to deviate all the way to the barriers. The gap did get shut to the point where she couldn't have squeezed through without making contact. And then I think Julianne Dore opened it up a little bit. If you look closely, if you look closely at what Wiebes had to do, she had to stop her cadence and putting the power down for a split second. She couldn't throw her bike as well as she could have. She would have won, I think, pretty comfortably. And when I say comfortably, I'm like by a wheel, half a wheel, which is still comfortably the way she timed it. If she was allowed to, just sprint on in the lane she was in, and if Julianne Dore had held her line. So when I saw it immediately, I was like, relegation, bang. La Flamme Rouge as well. We're talking in DM relegation has to be, because Julianne Dore's deviated from her lane. She was sprinting. She launched her sprint. You guys all remember the rules by now. We've been repeating it ad nauseum for like months now. And she'd endangered another rider. And I've seen a lot of stuff about how, there was no contact. It wasn't really that dangerous. Lorena Wiebes didn't have to go through that gap. Making physical contact is not a precondition for endangering another rider. The rider that's endangered, just because they have really good skills in avoiding an incident, doesn't mean they weren't put in danger. Alaphilippe, did he really put he or she in danger? I mean, he or she just unclipped. He didn't go down. No harm, no foul. Why is that? Why should that be a relegation? He wasn't really in danger. He didn't die. He didn't suffer any injuries. It's like, no, the rule is like, did they actually, cause them to maybe come enter into a dangerous situation that they wouldn't have, or have to take it. The way I look at that, interpret it is, do they have to take evasive action because of your deviation? And Lorena Wiebes had to take significant evasive action, both moving out of the lane she had chosen when she launched her sprint, which she was entitled to stay in, had Julian Dorn not deviated, and also when she had to duck her shoulder and squeeze through and sort of soft pedal in the barrier when that space was really closing. And this could have been a lot worse, and could have ended up a lot worse. And I guarantee if for some reason Lorena Wiebes had not been as good a bike handler and had clipped the barrier because she'd had to move over there and crashed, we wouldn't be seeing all these tweets about how the commissaires or jury's gone soft. And all the commentators, they didn't say anything in any language. I checked the Dutch, Italian, and in English. None of them mentioned it. And I'm looking at it, and I'm like, immediately, I'm like, that's a relegation. 100% that's going to happen. And credit to the UCI, I think they're getting better with the consistency of it. But I've ranted a lot about this race, Benji. What did the jury ultimately have to say, and what did Julien Dor have to say afterwards?
So the jury decided fairly, as deserved, like you just explained, that she gets relegated in the race to the last place in the group. And what Jolien Dore did on Twitter was respond to it. She responded to it, firstly sounding like she was accepting it, but I think it came out wrong because she ended up saying it wasn't my intention to ride Lorena Wiebes into the barriers. I felt her coming and tried to intercept her. Now, try to intercept her, I think that's a bad translation, but the issue is that it literally says, I felt her coming and tried to intercept her. Now, you're not supposed to do that, obviously. You've said it already. You can't just close the door on anybody. What she was trying to say, I think, in this tweet is that the Dutch translation would be opvangen. So she's trying to catch the attack or sprint of someone else by launching at the moment where she sees the other person launch, but that's not really the case because she's sprinting. So that's why I'm so confused about the translation and how it's applied here. So I don't know what she meant with saying try to intercept her, but it comes out way worse than it does. She does conclude that if the jury thinks that it's too much and disqualifies me, then I can only accept the decision. Really disappointed to end my season like this. Congrats, Team Sunweb and Lorena. So she congrats the other person, but I'm not 100% sure that the tweet is what she was supposed to tweet.
No, see, I don't really think there's a translation issue there just because of the surrounding language, like saying, I felt her coming and tried to intercept her. And then the next sentence is, if the jury thinks it's too much, i.e., if they think me intercepting her is too much and disqualify me, then I can accept that decision. If she meant acceleration or something like that, then obviously the jury wouldn't think an acceleration is too much and disqualify anyone about it. So I think she meant the deviation, and that's just so odd. And I called it out on Twitter. I was like, how can you not know the rules and like admit basically to deliberately blocking someone? Like it's not permitted to do that in the rules. And maybe they need to make the rules clearer, so, like in that respect, or publicize them more broadly. But yeah, I just think she's only got herself to blame, and the right rider won. Lorena Wiebes, she deserved to win because she was going to win this race had Julien Dor not deviated off her line. And again, no crash, so everyone probably thinks, a lot of people think I'm being hysterical about it, but this has to be a relegation. It has to be, because if it's not, then next time, every other rider will be like, well, I can do exactly the same thing. And then 8 times out of 10, sure, there won't be a crash. But what about the 2 times out of 10 it really goes wrong? And we end up in a Groenewegen Jakobsen situation, God forbid. So that's why it's a dangerous situation, and it's endangering other riders when you move over and squeeze them into the barriers like this, whether there's physical contact or not. But comment down below, let us know your thoughts on it. Obviously, we're well versed in the rule by now, as is the jury probably. I think it was the Tour de France jury today at Driedaagse Brugge-De. So maybe they learnt from the Bennett stuff if they reviewed that. But a great win for Lorena Wiebes, despite Sunweb. I don't really understand their tactics in the last 15Ks. Someone will have to explain that to me. Not riding tempo and also not attacking. Just, didn't really make sense. But still, they got the best sprinter anyway. Lotte Kopecky, I'm not sure what happened to her. I think the finale was just a little bit too messy for her. But that's all from us today. 3 races. I think the last Women's World Tour race of the season. We'll be back for the Giro and the Vuelta, brought to you by Le Col tomorrow. They supplied the kit for Tratnik's W today in the Giro. And we'll see you then. Ciao.